Hey everyone, I'm Pastor Jay and welcome to Simple Church Online. Whether you missed last Sunday, you're checking us out for the first time, or maybe even watching out of state, we're so glad that you're a part of our community. And we're praying today that as you watch, God would use this to bless your life. Enjoy the message.
Thank you guys for being here. Love being with Simple Church, and so many familiar faces in the room. Some I've seen today, some I haven't. Anyway, always grateful to have the opportunity to be here. And Jay, I will ask about what the Pentecostal meaning to the cruise. We'll get to that later. But no, I want to start off, and I know you guys have been in this series, and we're going to be reading. Just want to read through Psalms 23. This is in the New King James Version, and I want to start here before we move forward today. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Let's pray real quick. Dear God, we submit and surrender to your word this morning. We submit and surrender to the guidance and the leadership of the Holy Spirit. Speak to our hearts. Speak to our minds, awaken the dead parts of our soul, breathe life and energy into us today. Help our ears and our eyes to be open to what you want to show us. God, we give you this time in Jesus' name. Amen. I've known Jay for many years. I've known Zach for many years, and we all three of us, our firstborns were girls. And I don't know if this is accurate or not, but they may all be strong girls. And okay, it's accurate. But me and Zach, we both have senior daughters this year. And I actually remember, and I don't know if you all remember this, our kids hung out in Alva, Oklahoma, the great metropolis of Alva. We were on a college campus, and we were at a church camp kind of deal, and all our kids at that point were just running around hanging out together. And that old statement is true: the days are long and the years are short. And it is crazy for me to think the fact that I have a senior graduating this year. Time moves quickly. Now, my daughter Camden, as I said, was our first child, and she was born in Las Vegas, Sin City, right? And that's where she was born. I mean, it's funny, look, because she loves saying that now. So it's great that was. But we did ministry there for 6 years, and we actually moved out there when my wife was 6 months pregnant with Camden. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Christina. I did not think that through. But when it came to being parents, I was kind of the mindset, ready or not, here she comes kind of deal. We'll figure it out. I was naive. I was clueless. It was like I didn't know what I needed to know, at that point. And really, I was, again, the naivety of it, you just kind of were like hanging on by everything, just trying to get through it. And what's interesting with that for me is I'm very orderly. I like things organized. I did youth ministry, but even the chaos of youth ministry was controlled. I mean, I like things buttoned up. And those of you who are parents of newborns or toddlers know that there is nothing buttoned up about that. And so we would go to the park once Camden was able to walk. And again, I'm scared out of my mind. I just want her to survive. I want her to live every day is my goal. And I was just that scared, kind of anxious parent. And so you would see me at the park, and I guarantee you go to the park, you will find this walk going on. I was doing this. I was just behind her doing this. Because, I was scared to death. I was like, I've just got to be there for her, and I was following her around like that. And so here's the deal for her, is she knew that if she fell, I would pick her up. She knew that if she needed a Band-Aid, I was there to give her a Band-Aid. She knew that if she needed some water, I was there to give her water. If she needed a hug, I was there to give her a hug. Whatever she needed, she knew that I was this bald dad just doing this around the park, right? She knew that I was there. And here's the thing about Camden, when she went to the park and we did this, she still fell. Right? She still fumbled around. She still ate sand. She still got stuck in precarious situations and places. She still needed me to do things for her at times. But she had an unwavering trust and confidence that I was there regardless of where she found herself or what she needed. Now let me ask you this morning, do you walk in that kind of confidence and trust in the Lord? Believing that not only does God lead you, but He also has your back too. Do you recognize God's visible and sometimes invisible hand on your life or in your life? Do you walk in faith knowing that God has your best interests in mind and that His care is more than enough for you? You know, I think the illustration of me and Camden gives us a good picture of how God, our good shepherd, is caring for us, loving us, and leading us. It gives us a picture of Psalms 23, the verse that we're focusing on this morning, 23:6. Surely your goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Now, I'll be honest, and this is umbrella of grace and moment of confession here. The very first word of this text is loaded for me, and it's loaded with wrong and inaccurate thoughts and connotations of what a word should mean. Because when I heard this word, my first thing is to think of the movie Airplane, which I do not recommend, by the way. Get that straight. But you all, those of you old enough to know this movie, remember the doctor asked Ted if he could fly the plane, and shocked Ted says, "Surely you can't be serious," and the doctor responds with the iconic, "I am serious and don't call me Shirley," right? So that's the first place my mind went, not super spiritual, when I got to Psalms 23:6. Now, secondly, the word surely, I think in our common vernacular and usage, almost insinuates some doubt, right? Or clouded confidence at best. And surely it will rain next week. Surely they'll win one game. Surely we'll know soon, right? It's not a word that we associate with strong confidence. But that's its exact usage and intent here. Surely means certainly. Like there's no doubt, no hesitation, no concern whether or not this is true. It certainly, surely is. You can count on it. But what are we so certain about? What is God promising to follow us with? His goodness and His mercy. Now, goodness is getting what you don't deserve. Like, I didn't deserve someone paying for my lunch last week. Society burger. It was scrumptious. I didn't deserve a wife who puts up with my shortcomings and then also helps me when I need it the most, and also follows a guy going to Vegas when she's 6 months pregnant. I did not deserve that. I didn't deserve second chances and do-overs from coaches and teachers along the way. I didn't deserve my parents to help pay for my vehicle and my car insurance and all sorts of stuff when I was growing up. I didn't deserve the great opportunities I've had with certain ministries and churches. There are so many areas of my life and in my story where I've received these expressions of kindness and goodness that I didn't deserve. You see, goodness speaks to God's undeserved benevolence and generosity towards us. Psalms 31:19 says, "How great is the goodness you have stored up for those who fear you. I love that. He's stored up. I mean, there's so much of it, right? More that can be used. More that can be used. You lavish it on those who come to you for protection, blessing them before the watching world. Undeserved benevolence stored up for us. Goodness. Now, mercy is not getting what you do deserve, right? So goodness is getting what you don't deserve. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. First grade, Miss Busby's class had a very smart girl that sat in front of me. Her name was Kim Blaker. I was annoyed at her intelligence. I mean, seriously, I remember. I mean, I don't remember a lot, but I remember how annoyed I was at how smart she was. She went on to be valedictorian, so her smartness was legit, you know. But so I felt I had to do something. Class justice had to be displayed. And so back in the day, we used to pass papers back and grade each other's work. And back in the day, we used pencils. And so the students here know, pencils, what? Pencil bread. I mean, we had a lot of cool stuff going back in the 80s and 90s. But so I got her paper, you know, maybe the word was, I don't know, charge, and I just erased the H, carge, you know, I mean, whatever. I erased a few letters, marked her answers wrong. She needed it. She needed to be humble. And I'm that kind of guy. Looking out. I'm sure today she goes, I remember the day that I was humbled by Jeff Henson in first grade. Anyway, so I got in trouble that day. That's not where I'm going. I got in trouble that day. But here's what happened a week later. We had a sub. And I thought again it was my moment. She did not learn her lesson. And so I did it again. Same thing. Erased words, created words. She threw a fit. And here's what's crazy. The sub did nothing. Did nothing. And I don't know if they didn't communicate back then good with the teachers, didn't leave notes, whatever. I should have been kicked out of class. I should have got SWATs. I should have got a lot of stuff that day from that moment, but I did not get what I did deserve that day. That is mercy. Mercy withholds punishment and extends compassion. Mercy in the Old Testament was very evident through the price of sin being paid for by the shedding of blood. And you see that through the animal sacrifices of unblemished animals. And then Jesus came and did away with that by offering his own life as payment as the ultimate sacrifice once for all. To give us what? To give us mercy. To withhold punishment and extend compassion to us because of our sin. We deserve death. The wages of sin are death. We deserve eternal separation from God, but God gave us through Jesus mercy. Now, if we look through the rearview mirror of our lives, even in this past week, I bet we could see God's mercies all over us. Because here's the deal. We've all made stupid choices this week. We've probably all had impure thoughts that we've held on to. We've all at moments maybe operated out of selfish motives. We have all in some shape, form, or fashion had mishaps, mistakes, or messes that we were a part of. And listen, if we got what we deserve for all of those, oof, right? Mercy. Mercy, his goodness and his mercy follow us. Now, that follow word in verse 6, it is this word that has been translated by many to follow, but it is more accurately a word that involves direct action. So it is better described as pursue. Now, I want us to understand this kind of pursuit. Now, I want to point us to 1 Peter 5:8, and you're probably familiar with this verse, but it shows the intensity and desire of pursuit from our enemy, Satan. It says, 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Now, in that text, we see the pursuit of us for evil, right? For our destruction, to rob us, to hurt us, to enslave us. And then we read contrasting desires for our lives, contrasting pursuits, per se, in John chapter 10. I'm sure you guys have been all over this chapter talking about Jesus, the Good Shepherd. But listen to this in John 10:10. The thief's pursuit, is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose, Jesus' purpose, his pursuit, is to give us a rich and satisfying life. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like his purpose is to follow his kids, those of us who have submitted to the leadership of Jesus, to follow us with goodness and mercy. So David is saying that when God is our shepherd, even though enemies are nearby, even though the world can be cruel, it is his goodness, his mercy, his protection, and his provision that are pursuing us. This is such a beautiful, powerful, and important picture and promise for us to grasp this morning. Because for many of you here this morning, because of your upbringing, or maybe experiences you've had with the church, or maybe how God was presented to you, you might have this instant negative reaction to God following you, pursuing you, right? You'll be like, I knew it. I knew he didn't trust me. I knew he's waiting for me to speed. I knew he's waiting for me to, he's like the cosmic cop just waiting, right? Waiting for me to mess up, waiting for me to miss the mark. He's just hovering and smothering me, lurking, ready to bring shame and condemnation to me. For some of you, some of your thinking is God is following me just to point out my faults and critique my every turn. But here's the deal. The footsteps that you and I hear behind us as a follower of Jesus, they aren't the wrath of God. They are the goodness and mercy of God. And he is bringing them to fall upon us as we travel through this broken and messed up world. The sounds we should be hearing as a follower of Christ are the sounds of God's generosity, the sounds of his love, the sounds of his forgiveness, the sounds of his kindness, positioning themselves to find our lives, to surround our lives, to move in our lives in the good seasons and the bad ones. I want to pause here because I think there could be a propensity to hear this verse that God's goodness and mercy follow us, and to hear that because of that, that means that good thing or bad things, hard things, pain-filled things, horribly challenging seasons won't hit our lives, and that is not what it's saying. And I know you guys have unpacked every verse of this chapter, and you've definitely went through, even though I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, which obviously is speaking to the sobering reality that pain, heartache, and brokenness is inevitable in this world. It's not a matter of if we go through those seasons and times. It's a matter of when, and how do we respond when we do. So God's goodness and mercy doesn't mean we're exempt from pain and heartache. But in all seasons, God's goodness and mercy is trailing you. God's goodness and mercy is flowing to you. God's goodness and mercy is finding you, pursuing you, even when you and I don't see it. We found ourselves in one of those tough seasons in 2008. My wife, Christina, she called me. I was in the office at the church, and at this time she was 26 weeks pregnant. And she called me and she says, my water broke. And, when you go through, this was second child, but you're still like, okay, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe, sometimes that stuff happens. It wasn't. She went to the hospital. Her water really did break. And all of a sudden, we're kind of in the midst of this crisis of, wow, this is very early, very, very early. And what are we supposed to do? Now, what's crazy is she was in the hospital, probably 3 weeks at least. And Carter ended up saying, I need out around week 28, which honestly, the fact that he was in there 2 weeks is pretty crazy. But he stayed in there 28 weeks, so we got to go get him. They went and got him. Again, a little bit naive and clueless, even though it was our second one, of what was going to happen. But at that moment, right when he came out, he went on auction, and he was in the NICU for 10, 11 weeks. And so all of a sudden, and some of you have been there, are there, a phone call, a moment like that, where life has changed, where you're in a situation that you didn't feel prepared for or that you didn't see coming. And that's where we were. I look back at that time. I don't know how we got through it, and some of you are in that or have been that. You know, it was a blur. It was exhausting. We couldn't even, during that season, because of overstimulation, like we couldn't even really, we saw him early in the morning and late at night for little bits of time because he was feeding tube, oxygen, all the things, right? Had heart issues, had lung issues, all the things. He was 2 pounds, 8 ounces when he was born. And so, I mean, again, naivety, going through that season thinking, hoping everything is going to be okay, right? And fearing the worst and preparing for the worst, but not knowing. And honestly, being in that NICU setting, you're seeing a lot of stories. You're seeing a lot of narratives play out in a lot of people's lives. And it was crazy. You see the ups, you see the downs, and 10, 11 weeks, you see a lot. But after 10, 11 weeks, Carter got to come home, and he came home on oxygen, and he came home with a heart monitor. And by the way, those heart monitors are frightening if you ever come. I mean, they're so loud. Your whole neighborhood knows if something's wrong with your child. But he came home, and honestly, he's a 15-year-old boy with a mop on his head and for hair, and has done well. And a lot of those things, lungs, heart stuff, they are nowhere to be seen, are not affecting his life. Now, when I look back at that season, and I see God doing something in me. I see God preparing me. I see God developing things in me that I never would have wanted necessarily through that, but never would have happened unless it was through that. I look back on that season, and again, you can see a lot of things in the rearview mirror a lot better, right? I look back and I can see the visible and invisible hand of God all over the place, literally all over the place. And let me give you a few things of this, of really examples of how God was pursuing us with goodness and mercy far beyond our understanding and far beyond our awareness. A few weeks prior to my wife's water breaking, she went to the doctor, and they wanted to give her a steroid shot that ended up being very critical to Carter's lung development and honestly a little bit to his weight. The fact that Carter stayed in the oven per se for 26 to 28 weeks, I mean, it's amazing. I tell people that all the time. They're like water broke and she didn't deliver him until 2 more weeks? Yeah, 2 more weeks, which honestly gave him unbelievable needed growth and development in those 2 weeks. We made a decision once her water broke, because they, on insurance stuff, we went ahead and put Carter on mine and hers. And again, we didn't know how this thing was going to play out. We didn't know any of it. Well, Carter ended up costing way over $1 million for all the expense for all of that. And I'm not even sure we paid more than a penny. I don't know that we paid anything because of the double insurance. And then we think about the amount of love and care and support, the meals, the calls, the prayer. I mean, I remember being in the hospital bawling because I was overwhelmed with people's generosity and love to her. I mean, I didn't even, especially being in the ministry, I felt like you're always giving it. You're always like, but being on the receiving end was very overwhelming. It was very overwhelming. And I remember breaking. And so I look back, and why I share this is even in a blur of a season. God's hand, God's goodness, God's mercy was pursuing us in ways we could see and in ways we couldn't see. I think of how Christina has used that experience to be able to reach out and encourage and comfort and minister to other moms that are going through the same thing with child in NICU. There's so many things that came out of that season. So listen, the good seasons, God's goodness and mercy will follow you. The tough seasons, God's goodness and mercy will follow you. And what a profound and powerful promise that regardless of life and what you're dealing with, God's goodness and mercy will follow you. Anywhere you and I go, God's mercy and goodness will follow us, right? Wherever you are, whatever you are going through today, God's mercy and goodness is pursuing you today. Our seasons can't shake His goodness and mercy. Our experiences, whether they're on the mountaintop or in the valley, can't shake His goodness and mercy. Our faulty attitudes, which we have from time to time, can't shake His goodness and mercy. Our tendencies can't shake His pursuit of us. Our faltering faithfulness can't shake His goodness and mercy. Our moments of doubt can't shake it. Our bouts with anxiety and discouragement can't shake it. Nothing can shake the pursuit of God's goodness and mercy over your life and over mine. Listen, and some of you, this is all you need to hear today. You need to hear that God pursues you with a tenacity, a faithfulness, a crazy loyalty, a fierce love, with goodness in His right hand and mercy in His left. He is chasing you. He is behind you. He is leading. That's what blows my mind. And not only is He leading us, but He has got the back, right? He is covering us as well. We find goodness and mercy working together so many times through Scripture. And I'm not going to read them this morning, but for time's sake. But maybe the greatest text that we find where you see goodness and mercy side by side, and I would say that kind of comes to life, is found in Luke 15, the parable of the prodigal son. The son, and some of you, I don't know if you guys have spoke about this parable recently, probably, but the son takes an early inheritance, goes off and spends it recklessly, finds himself in a pig pit, just, eating corn soup and whatever else is going on in there. And in that moment, he comes to his senses and he goes back home. Expecting to be rejected. That's definitely what he deserved, right? For bringing shame on his father and his family and his community. And if somehow he was accepted back in, the anger and the resentment towards him from his father and the community would be overwhelming and also would be justified. And then we encounter this response, Luke 15, verse 20. It says, "So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion," that's mercy, "he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son.' But his father said to the servants, 'Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him.'" What's that? That's goodness. "Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet." What's that? That's goodness. "And kill the calf that we have been fattening." What is that? That's goodness. "We must celebrate," goodness, "with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and now has returned to life. He was lost, but now he's found." So the party began. Goodness and mercy hand in hand. Now, wow, it is with this posture, listen, and this heart and this attitude and this kind of a logical and unreasonable, compassionate action that God is pursuing us with as well. Goodness in His right hand, mercy in His left. And when I think about this, try to make sense of this to me. Try to convince me that God's love for you and I is reasonable. Try to make sense and convince me that God's heart for us, try to convince me this, that God's heart for us is corrupt, jaded, distant, and mean-spirited. Try to convince me that living life without that kind of leadership, without that kind of love, without that kind of care is the life that you and I were created for. Try to convince me that that's a better life. You see, when you and I understand the true nature of Christ, His character, His faithfulness, who He really is, it will not push you further away. It will draw you closer in. When we try to grasp God's heart in our best ability, the entirety of God's heart for us, the entirety of God's care and concern for those who follow Him, it does not prove culture's vantage point of this impersonal, distant, and self-serving, uninvolved God. It actually dispels them. And it gives you and I promises and pictures to hold on to, like the ones that we're reading today. You know, in the 80s and 90s, there was this phenomenon that was happening. It was called the magic eye. Anyone know what the magic eye is? Those of you who are old enough, remember, I'm sorry, students, that we're using such old references for you today. I'm sorry. I should have done better. It's my fault. But these images, they even had books. And these books, like, you'd stare at this picture, right? And you like, and what's funny, I'll tell you right now, you stare at these pictures and like what looked like scrambled stuff like became 3D layer. And I'll tell you, the older I get, the better I am at them. And I don't know if that's because I just walk around with blurry eyes or what. But I'm like, wow, I couldn't do that when I was younger. But here's the deal. Those of you know, and I think we have one. Were we able to get it? Now, hey, if you guys can do this from your seats, wow, you're good. But this is what they are, and you're able to see things in 3D, and you're able to, like, you just stare at it, and you're able just to see a lot of activity and things that you couldn't see if you were just to look at that. Now, if some of you are, have arachnophobia, this is probably not the picture for you. So that I was doing it last night, and I was like, whoa, I don't want to see that in the morning. But here's the thing about the magic eye. When you focus and you give attention to and you stare at and you gaze hard and you look intensely, you're able to see things revealed to you that otherwise you would have never seen. And as I read this text this morning, and as we land this today, what I've realized is I don't think we look hard enough at God. I don't think we look long enough. I don't think we look close enough. I don't think our eyes are locking into the layers and the promises and the character and the beauty of God enough. Because I think what's happened, I'm guilty, I've grown up here. What's happened is we go. We do this, do that, do this. I need to do this to be this. I need to show this to be this, right? But when's the last time we've just sat and stared at the faithfulness and character of God? Really just sat and thought about how His hand has touched our life, how His hand has protected, how His hand has provided, how His hand has acted generously when we did not deserve it, how His goodness has found our lives, how His forgiveness has found our lives, how His patience has found our lives when we had acted the fool, right? When we have done things over and over again, same place, same thing, same prayer, and God's faithfulness and patience and grace and forgiveness was there every time. When was the last time we sat in that? When was the last time that we stopped all the nonsense and actually wanted to look at Jesus in the face for who He is, the fullness of what we can understand and what we can comprehend? When is the last time we've done that? See, many times our eyes are we're looking in the wrong directions. We're fixating on the wrong things. Even spiritual things, even church-driven things. Our attention is misguided. It goes to people, it goes to social media, it goes to news, it goes to circumstances, it goes to so many shallow and temporal things. And I'm not saying that we sit here and we stare into the heart and eyes of God for 24 hours a day. But I'm saying when we look at the entirety of God's care and concern and track record in our life, let me tell you, it will humble you. It will be easy for you to worship. Because when you see His even in the tough seasons, how He came through, even in the hard seasons where you were full of what ifs and whys, when He loved you and cared for you and gave you exactly what you need, even if you didn't know that you needed it, it will put you in a position where you will walk differently. You will walk with spiritual confidence. You will walk with sure footing. You will walk with joy in the midst of circumstances. You will have the promise of God brimming out of your life. You will have the passion of God rooted deeply in your life. You will have secure footing, secure foundation for whatever may come your way when you stare and lock eyes with God. So when was the last time you focused and you removed distractions and fixed your attention to Jesus? You know, I love that text in Hebrews 12. It says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. What? Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. When is the last time you carved out time to just be with Jesus and consider His character and His heart towards you? When is the last time you had extended time to worship Jesus? No technology, no interruptions, no action lists, no grocery shopping lists, you know. We do like an hour off of technology every night, and you would think that like I'm putting my kids in some cruel treatment, throwing them in prison, not giving them meals, you know. But again, that's the world we are distracted people. Distracted, can't focus, can't sit. But here's the deal, we need to look longer. We need to look harder. And I promise you, you will find a God who cares for you. You will find a God who loves you irrationally. You will find a God who deeply wants to be in relationship with you. You will find a God who wants to lead your life. A God who is pursuing you and me with goodness and mercy. A God who wants to be close to you. A God who wants to be at home in your heart. I'm reminded of this old song, Turn Your Eyes to Jesus. And the chorus goes like this, turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in His wonderful face. And the things of earth will grow strangely dim in light of His glory and grace. You know, I remember we had a guy at the church I grew up in. And when I was there, he was probably in his 60s. Now he's in his 90s. He's still there. He's still teaching Sunday school. And I remember each time that he would get up, whether it be communion or sometimes he'd do stuff at Christmas, and he would talk about Jesus, he would begin weeping. And at that point, he's going to make me weep. At that point, you know, you don't fully understand it because as a teenager, I just had a glimpse, just a sliver of what he had experienced, what he had seen, and what he knew. And I think about that, and I'm like, this guy, he sat with Jesus, he stared at Jesus, he saw Jesus in so many ways, in so many situations, in so many seasons of his life. All he could do when he mentioned Jesus was weep. And I think, guys, listen, there's not a lot of action steps to this message this morning. I'm like, that's all, I like the application. Have to have application. Not a lot of application today. Here's the application, okay? I want you to look at Jesus. Whatever that looks like this week, whatever that looks like today, spend time seriously praying through, trying to know the Creator of the universe and what His plans and heart are for you. For some of you, the action step is to look. For some of you, listen, you came in here and you have a lot of stuff going on. and you need to surrender whatever it is to the Good Shepherd. You need to surrender. You need to trust the outcomes to Him. And your action step today is, because I understand the entirety of God's character and His nature and His love towards me, I will surrender these outcomes at His feet. Because not only does He go ahead of me, but He follows me with His goodness and mercy. And some of you today, the action step is to finally submit to Jesus. For some of you, you've been running away from Him forever. And there have been enough people and enough churches and enough things that have given you obstacles and challenges and excuses to not submit your life to Him. But listen, you're at a crossroads. And again, I'm more than willing to be convinced of God not being a God that loves, pursues, is good, is holy, is faithful. But if He is, and if these things are true, it deserves my consideration to submit my life to Him. If these things are true, and He is who He says He is, and He did what He said He did, He died for me, and He resurrected, if these things are true, it deserves my consideration. And for some of you, you need to submit your life to the Good Shepherd today. Because when you surrender your life to the Good Shepherd, goodness and mercy will follow you. I want to close with this scripture. It's 1 Peter 2, 9 through 11. I think this kind of speaks with the hope that we have, the peace that we can have, the faith that we can walk in, the confidence that we can have, the courage that we can have, the belief that we can have when God's mercy and goodness are pursuing us. It says this, but you are not like that, for you are a chosen people. You are royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own possession. As a result, you can show others the goodness of God. Whole other message, but when the goodness and mercy come to you, they also flow through you, right? You can show others the goodness of God, for He called you out of the darkness into His wonderful light. Once you had no identity as a people, now you are God's people. Once you received no mercy, now you have received God's mercy. Listen, Jesus is worth your trust. Jesus is worth your attention. Jesus is worth your time. Jesus is worth your consideration. Jesus is worth your affection. He is worth your surrender. He is worth your submission. He is worth whatever risk you might think it will take. He is worth it.
Once again, thank you for stopping by today. We'd love for you to be a part of our family at one of our services. You can find out all of our information at simplechurchtulsa.com, and we'd love to pray for you any way we can. So please message us, and we hope you have a great week.